Welcome to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Hi, and welcome to What Do You Want to Do? This week, I'd like to do another retrospective with one of my favorite guests, Sarah Infini Takagi. Sarah is a classical pianist, a jazz singer, a stand-up comedian, and an actor and a dancer. And she's just an all-around creative, and she is due to be on our show again. But the first appearance that she made last year in 2021 was a really fascinating interview. It was one of the most unusual, if not the most unusual, I'll say it is the most unusual interview that I've ever done, because it included elements of the supernatural, of the mystic realm, of philosophic topics and unique experiences that Sarah had. And I'm going to replay the first maybe 10 or 20 minutes of that interview so that we can take another look. You know, like when you read a good book, you might have to read it again. When you see a good movie, you might have to see it again. Same thing with a really good interview. You can get more out of the interview the second or third time around sometimes and focus on another aspect of the way the person answers than you can the first time you see it, especially when you're doing it. What people don't realize is when you're doing an interview, it's not the same as a person watching the interview passively, because when you're watching an interview, you can totally concentrate on what the person is saying. When you're the interviewer, you're concentrating on the overall interview and how the interview itself is flowing. Are you asking the right questions? How does it come across? So it's not really until an interviewer sees their own recording, if it's recorded, that they really get the most out of the interview answers that the audience did, if that makes any sense. So let's go to this right now. I'm going to rewatch it myself with you guys, and then I'm going to make a little commentary afterwards.
One of the spiritual teachers that I study with is an Indian saint named Paramahansa Yogananda. And he's long ago deceased, I believe in 1951. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, so I follow his teachings. And when I became a faculty at New England Conservatory, I found out that Paramahansa Yogananda, the Indian saint, when he first arrived in the United States, the first town he came to was Boston. And then he actually apparently gave a lecture in Jordan Hall in something like 1921. Again, I'm completely bluffing. I have no idea if it's really 1921, but I think I'm close. So it was apparently Paramahansa Yogananda, who's known to have supernatural powers and is what I would call my spiritual guru. He stood on that stage to a packed audience and gave a lecture about spirituality. So to me, when I discovered the fact that my greatest spiritual hero and idol and avatar, I consider him like avatar level, saint, had stood there and gave a whole lecture about spirituality, since my goal in creating that album was to also be very spiritual. I had prayed to Paramahansa Yogananda for a blessing for that album. But you know what? That is going to, I'm so sorry, but it's going to also lead to a concert I did very close to the time that I made that album, where I played all these repertoire that I consider extremely sacred, like, for example, Quartet for the End of Time. It's a piece by Olivier Messiaen, who wrote this piece in a concentration camp. And it was a very spiritual piece about his faith And apparently it was premiered in the concentration camp with broken string cello and broken clarinet, and apparently in front of 5,000 prisoners. I performed that piece in Jordan Hall, as well as other amazing pieces like the Bach Busoni Chacon, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so right before I gave that concert, I prayed to Yogananda silently, and I didn't pray out loud. I didn't share with anyone that I was praying to Paramahansa Yogananda, but right before the concert, I was praying fervently for the concert to be blessed so that everybody else who's in the audience will be blessed. In addition, I do another thing called Reiki healing. That's another whole subject, but as a Reiki healer, I had prayed that Reiki, which is a healing energy, be sent out from the piano and the concert hall and from the music. So I did the two things, the Reiki healing and the Yogananda. So this is what happened, which is really, really unbelievable, is when I came out at the beginning of that concert in Jordan Hall, it was a packed hall. One of my friends' son, who I've only known from sight and maybe have one time said hello to, came with his dad, who is more my friend. And he sat and watched the whole concert. And after the concert, the son of my friend came to me and said, Sarah, I need to talk to you. And I said, sure. And he goes, no, we need to go to this corner and I have to tell you something. And I said, okay. And this guy, his name is Micah, and he was a visual artist. He said to me, and this is a guy that I've never talked to. I've never had a conversation with him, except that I know his dad is my friend. He said, when you came out to perform this sacred concert, I saw Paramahansa Yogananda, the Indian saint, standing right next to you.
Wow. Wow.
And this guy, Micah's father, is extremely spiritual man who meditates all the time. And Micah, I heard, was a meditator. And he has been following another Indian saint named Ramana Maharishi, but not Yogananda. But he knew his saints. So apparently when he was ready to watch the concert and I came out, he said literally he saw Paramahansa Yogananda with his long Indian hair standing right next to me. This is not, I mean, this saint has deceased in 1951, but he said he saw this man. And then he heard a voice saying, Micah, you must do a painting of Sarah because of, or I don't know, I think that was it. You must do a painting of Sarah. So he said, Paramahansa Yogananda was there, and then he went into the piano and merged. And that's what happened. And then I had a couple people who I've never met come to me after the concert crying and saying, when you started to play, I started to cry. And they also said something similar to you, like, I've never had this experience before. I came and sat down. As soon as you started to play, I started to cry. And for me, this was the kind of experience that I had in Jordan Hall, where it was unbelievable. My jaws dropped to the floor when Micah, this guy that I don't really know, said, I saw Paramahansa. And I said to him, did you know that I prayed to Paramahansa Yogananda so that this whole concert would be blessed? And his jaws also dropped, saying, oh my God, I'm right. I wasn't hallucinating. And so that was incredible. And now that goes right back to the Lavender Bouquet album that you listened to. What happened was when I was making that album, which was after this concert, I also prayed because at this point, like, I know that prayer works. I'm a big believer in prayer. So I said, okay, I want the angels of healing. I believe in angels of healing. And I want the Reiki and energy to go into this album and the piano and the recording. And I, with my hands, that's where the Reiki energy comes out of. I like literally Reiki the whole piano and the keyboards. And then I prayed and I said, I want this album to be a healing album for listeners and not a piano virtuoso album that's just about showing off, or, I didn't want it to be a typical regular classical album where you just play Beethoven and Liszt and whatever. I wanted the album to specifically touch listeners in a way that would be healing. So
it did.
Now getting back to you, I'm feeling like I've had other people tell me when they listen, it feels very soothing and healing. So maybe that was why you were touched by the energy of Reiki and maybe the Yogananda's blessings.
A fascinating interview the second or third time around. Paramahansa Yogananda is the author, or was the author, of the autobiography of a yogi, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, and I had heard of before I met Sarah, but I've never read the book. And this kind of motivates me to want to read the book, and I'm going to be reading it pretty soon. And maybe I should have waited until I read that book before I showed this again. But I don't know, I just felt like showing it because it just shows us that there are so many things in this world that we don't understand. Maybe we're not meant to understand. We're meant to learn it as we live. And the whole topic came about when I mentioned to Sarah that one of her CDs made me cry. It was a piano instrumental. And I'm not one to really be emotional at a piece of music. And when I told her the story, she told me this story. It made some of the audience members cry. So it's really, really interesting. There are energies that we don't understand. We all know the quote that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. But we don't know the nature of many energies that we've never heard of, that we don't know about. How many energies are there in the world? And what do they do? What are their functions? How do they interact with us in life? So I think that's one of the things, just one, that we can get from this interview. So this is a little bit of a different show. Like I said, I wanted to recap that interview just because it blew me away. And I really want to have Sarah back on the show because I failed to ask her the question that I ask all my guests. And that is, how would you suggest, what would be your advice for me or for anybody who wants to break in and do what you do? In her case, what if I want to be a classical pianist? What if I want to be a jazz singer? What if I want to be a stand-up comedian or a dancer? How would a person go about it? Is there one road to these disciplines? Are there multiple roads to these disciplines? Are they the same for everybody? These are the questions that we all must ask when we develop an interest, when we develop a passion for what we think we would like to do. Sometimes you'll enter something, a job, a career that you'll maybe be okay with for a year or two, and then you think, this doesn't quite do it for me. So a lot of people make the leap and they will advance to something else. It doesn't always work. Some people make mistakes. You can leave a career that maybe you were meant for, or you can stay in a career that you were not meant for, or vice versa. It's different for everybody. Sometimes you have to find out in a roundabout way what feeds your passion and what doesn't. Anyway, I don't want to get too philosophic here. Join me again next time for another show. And until then, think about the question, what do you want to do?